The government will not arbitrarily open the country's borders to foreign travellers, and that will depend on the COVID-19 situation in their countries of origin, says PM Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob. Ismail Sabri says every decision will be made based on the advice and recommendations of the Ministry of Health. Right now, while individuals who are fully vaccinated are allowed to enter the country, the border remains closed to tourists. The PM was replying to Senator Datuk Razali Idris on whether the government had a backup crisis management plan if the number of COVID-19 cases were to spike again if borders were to be open. Ismail Sabri says the government is constantly improving the SOPs and starting from August 12th had started allowing fully vaccinated citizens and non-citizens to apply for permission to undergo mandatory quarantine at home. New COVID-19 cases saw an uptick to 9,890 today from 9,380 on October 6 after states including Selangor and Sabah saw higher numbers. A total of 12,884 recoveries were reported. Meanwhile, Health Minister Khairi Jamaluddin says the government had decided to purchase the molnupiravir pills from Merck & Co. despite Malaysia's high vaccination rates, as there are still cases of breakthrough infection. He says that the pills can be used to treat category 3, 4 and 5 patients. However, he says that since nearly 90% of the adult population have been fully vaccinated, a big supply is not needed. Hence why the government had only signed a letter of undertaking for enough doses to cover 150,000 patients as a start. Khairi declined to comment on the cost of the pills, citing a confidentiality agreement. It had been reported that Merck has been accused of jacking up the price of the new medicine by 40 times of its actual cost. Petronas says that its rights over the land and Petronas complex in Khartoum, Sudan were obtained in accordance with rightful applicable laws. The national oil firm says that it has been jointly working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to exercise all diplomatic channels with the authorities in Sudan to amicably resolve the issue. Petronas says that as there have been no positive developments, it has filed a request for arbitration at the International Centre for Settlement of Dispute and is unable to elaborate further. ICSID is a unit under the World Bank Group. It had been reported earlier that the Sudan Transitional Government had moved to confiscate Petronas' assets on allegations that it had been acquired through illegal means during the rule of ousted leader President Omar al-Bashir. Maybank has signed a letter of intent with Tenaga Nasional's wholly owned subsidiary TNBX to purchase Malaysia Renewable Energy Certificates, equivalent to 70% of its Malaysian operation Scope 2 carbon emissions. This will make Maybank the first bank in Malaysia to purchase these non-tangible energy commodities to support RE generation as part of its sustainability goals. In a statement, Maybank said that its intended purchase of these MRECs will be for an initial 5-year period beginning from January 2022. It is expected to help reduce the group's Scope 2 carbon emissions within its Malaysian operations by some 70% each year. President and CEO Datuk Abdul Farid Alias says that the intended purchase of the MRECs is one of the components of Maybank's overall efforts to achieve its sustainability goals that were recently announced as part of the group's 5-year M25 plan. According to him, the introduction of the MRECs to the group's portfolio is a step towards realising its carbon neutral position by 2030 and reflects its ultimate pursuit in driving responsible transition through its commitment to opting for RE whenever possible to power its group operations. REC is a tradable market-based instrument that is produced for every 1 megawatt per hour of RE generation delivered to the grid, together with all the associated environmental benefits. The Socio-Economic Research Centre is expecting Bank Negara to keep the overnight policy rate at 1.75% until mid-2022 to support a firmer revival in domestic demand for the coming months. SERC ED Ling Heng Gui says Malaysia's continued low interest rate environment complements the targeted fiscal support to secure a sustainable recovery path. SERC anticipates the country's inflation, as measured by the Consumer Price Index, to stay relatively stable for the rest of 2021. Malaysia's OPR of 1.7% 7% is the lowest on record, according to data dating back to 2004. Meanwhile, SERC says that Malaysia's gross domestic product may grow in the fourth quarter after a subdued third quarter, which saw a decline or sharp pullback in growth due to COVID-19-driven movement restrictions. Lee says that while the increasing level of vaccinations will support the normality of activities, pandemic risks remain and that continued mitigation and surveillance are a must to ensure a sustained revival. SERC has maintained its full-year GDP forecast for 2021 at 4%. Arika Corp has bagged a 2-year engineering contract worth $196 million for a fibre-to-home connectivity project located in Langkawi, Kedah. Arika says the project will be undertaken in 2 parts. The first is for the civil works, while the second is for the network, IT and services components. The contract is expected to contribute to earnings from FY22 onwards. MD Hasnul Ismail says Arika is going back to basics and will focus on its core strength in construction, infrastructure, telecommunication infrastructure and property. Arika recently completed a kitchen sinking exercise that it said helped to address some concerns raised by its external auditors, Messrs Crowe Malaysia, over material uncertainty and is exploring fundraising to strengthen cash flow.